Welcome back to Breakbeat Code. In this section, we're going to break the code with variables. We will demonstrate lots of ways to break the code by intentionally creating errors and bugs. Remember, errors aren't failure, they're feedback. It's the Python interpreter telling the coder how to fix the code. Error messages are like clues, and the process of fixing the bug is like solving a mystery or puzzle. Programmers spend a lot of time fixing bugs, so debugging a program is a core skill you'll need to start to build with breakbeat code. So in this lesson, we're going to learn a few ways to break the code. The first is creating syntax errors with variable names. The second is using a variable before we define it. The third is misspelling a variable name so that they don't match, so that the names that you assign don't match. And number 4, changing the capitalization of variable names so that they don't match. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the rules for creating variables. There's 2 main things to remember. The first is that variable names need to start with a letter or an underscore. The second is variable names can't start with a number. The name can include a number, but it can't start with a number. So for example, any of the following variable names will work in Python, and you can see the little box on the right. So DJ name, because that starts with a letter, underscore DJ name, because that starts with an underscore, DJ name with a capital D, DJ name 123, which includes a number but doesn't start with a number. The last one there actually won't work because it starts with a number. You can see the little X there. Capitalization matters. So for example, beat1 with a capital B is not the same as beat1 with a lowercase b. DJ name in all caps is not the same as DJ name in lower caps. The variable names can't start with a number. The name can include a number, but it can't start with a number. You can see in the code that the variable name 1beat is not valid. Variable names can't start with a number. You can also see that we get a syntax error or a parse error in EarSketch because we broke the rules for naming the variable. Using a variable before we define it. In this next example, we've created variables for track, start, and end. Then we find the fit media function on the next line. Fit media, beat1, track, start, end. So just below the code editor, we create a variable for beat1 and assign the sound to it. When we run the code, we get an error message that says, name error, name beat1 is not defined on line 17. But wait, we actually defined the variable. We created a variable called beat1 on line 19 and assigned a sound file name to it. So why do we get this error? Remember, the Python interpreter reads the code from top to bottom. We try to use the variable beat1 on line 17, but we don't define it until later in the script on line 19. So Python is interpreting the code from top to bottom, and it stops when it sees an error. So it doesn't even get to line 19 because it already sees an error on line 17 and stops there. And if it does not read line 19, then it does not create the beat1 variable in memory. Next, we will break the code by using variable names that don't match each other. Variable names need to match. When we tried to use the myname variable as the argument for the print function, we misspelled it as mynames with an S. We get a name error. It says mynames is not defined on line 12. In this case, mynames with an S at the end is not defined. When we defined the variable, we actually named it myname without an S. Variable names need to match in terms of capitalization as well. We created a variable name called beat1. We get a name error because variable beat1 with a capital B is not defined. Beat1 with a capital B is not the same as beat1 with a lowercase b. So just to recap, in this lesson, we learned how to break the code in a few different ways, including 1, creating syntax errors with variable names, 2, using a variable before we define it, 3, misspelling variable names so that they don't match, and lastly, changing the capitalization of variables so that they don't match. We'll see you on the next lesson of Breakbeat Code.